Hello. We have with us Dr. Kanan Madkaria, professor at IIT Bombay. Um, he has done his PhD from Rice University in US back, at a time when there were very few PhDs migrating from India to the US, very few researchers. Back in 1985, he pursued his chemical engineering. Ever since, he has also returned to India and been a part of Indian academia. He hails from a very humble background. In fact, had his education in a Tamil language medium school and then migrated into research. I would like to also introduce myself. I am Nipun. I am a co-founder of the Science for a Billion initiative. Science for a Billion initiative is an initiative we have started for encouraging and inspiring science uh, to the masses in India and in developing countries. So, without further ado, let's get on to an interview with our esteemed guest here, who has done some amazing work in the field of education. And let me start with this. Sir, could you tell us more about your background, about what inspired you to get into science, and what hurdles you faced in going there, and what excites you the most?
So I was a student in a small town, and it was in Tamil medium, as you pointed out. And in fact, I came to know in my 12th, in those days it was called PUC, that there was something called IIT. And then I innocently asked, can anybody apply for it? And that friend said, sure, anybody can apply. Then I got the book and I prepared for it and got into IIT. And then after getting into IIT, it was tough as far as socializing was concerned because I could not construct a single English sentence. And it took quite a bit of time. Of course, IIT gave me opportunities to improve my English during my stay. And of course, I was a good student as far as academics are concerned in the school as well as in IIT. And so I got into IIT. So there is no question of why am I doing science, but it is something that I find that I like. I always liked mathematics um, and solving a problem. And during PhD, of course, it was a problem that one has to pose, the student has to pose, and then find the solution. And more than solving a particular problem, one develops tools and techniques to solve problems, plural. So, and how does one go about proposing a problem, doing a literature survey, comparing various things, and then be prepared for setbacks. And in those days, in fact, science citation was not available. So it was very difficult. Digital databases were not available, or if they were available only in certain places, not available in all places. Even Rice didn't have some of the science citation index. Rice was not getting in those days. Nowadays, you get them in Google Scholar citations. You get, because citations help you to search forward, because they tell you who are the people who followed your work, which was never the case in old days when you had the paper version. Okay. So very interesting things. And then during my chemical engineering PhD, I also did a master's in electrical engineering. I was fascinated by some of the hardware kind of a thing, using devices for data acquisition and control, what is popularly now known as IoT. So in those days, it was not known as IoT. I, in fact, used a VAX 11 bar 750 computer Many people may not even have heard of it, but it used to be extremely popular to control a data acquisition system that came with a chromatograph. And then we collected information. We did first Fourier transform of it, and did all kinds of very challenging things, very interesting things. And so why did I come back to India? I always felt um, that India was, after going to the US, I found that in many countries, the students either had to serve their army after graduation, especially if they studied with government funds. That was the case in Israel, Greece, France, uh, Taiwan, various countries, in fact. And or it could be very expensive, in which case, for example, in the US, it is not compulsory, but then costs are very high. In India, it's a combination of best of both. That you have low cost education. On top of it, the country says you are free to do whatever you want. So I thought it was, and given that that was provided with many poor people contributing to the tax, for example, because after all, how does the government provide low cost education? It's all through tax collected, and it is not collected from income tax. Income tax makes up a very small portion of the total kitty. Most of it is indirect tax, and everybody pays for it. Even if you buy a chewing gum, you pay for it. You get petrol, you pay for it. You buy kerosene, you pay for it. You buy, perhaps you don't pay for rice, and stuff like that, but you bathroom chappal, if you buy, then you pay for it, and so on and so forth. So this is something that the government collects from everybody and gives very affordable education. On top of it, it says that it's a free country, you can do whatever you want. That I thought was generosity from Indian public, that I felt like, doing something about it. I always wanted to return to India. And of course, in old days, India, people say that contributed to about 25% of our GDP, not too long ago, just maybe 300-400 years ago. And it is not because of gold, it is not because of anything else, but I would think that it is mainly because of the produce, because India has arable land, fertile lands, we get rains, we get enough sunshine, and so that is always with us, no matter what else may happen. So that way, India has a great potential. The fact that we still have poor people in India is it's an oxymoron, I would say. I mean, if you work for it. So I strongly believe that something can be done. And so I'm here in India, and it's a lot of challenges. It's a great place to be in, because you have exciting opportunities. You're an engineer, you're a problem solver. So you go about solving problems. And when you see the benefit that is, that pays for all the work that you've done, it's a payback for that.
Yes, sir. So that sounds very inspiring, and I hope that the people listening into this also relate to the job satisfaction element that is there when you come back to India. The amount of satisfaction you get from the amount of change you can possibly create. So, on a similar lines, I wanted to ask. In India, we've often found it very difficult to shift our fields. If we join in engineering, for example, or in, do a PhD in physics, it becomes difficult to go into, say, economics in the traditional routes that we have built. So what made you shift from, your core competence in chemical engineering after doing a PhD nonetheless, and into the field of education? Somewhere around 1998 or 2000, the year 2000, when you did make that leap.
Actually, it is not correct that I'm not a chemical engineer anymore. I'm still with the chemical engineering department. I still teach courses, but I can take. I have said can we do something to all chemical engineers in India, for example, that a physicist can do, that a economist can do, mathematician can do, and accountant can do, and of course any engineer can do, scientist and so on can do.
Mm.
So for example, I asked this question. Of course, this is a part of a larger program that we are in. I asked this question, how many chemical engineering graduates in the country go to chemical engineering jobs, take up chemical engineering jobs? In fact, whenever there is a crisis of employment, they don't get chemical engineering jobs, and they do end up in IT fields. In fact, IT has been a savior for quite some time. But if some of those IT jobs are automated, that people are talking about, 4.0, 5.0, when it comes, then all these things will be automated. Then all these guys, will lose the job. Then what will happen? How are we going to do this? At the same time, I asked about the industry. For every Reliance, which is the largest, for example, group in India that is into chemicals business, you will have about 10,000 small companies, and they all feed into a company like Reliance or Aditya Birla or Tata's and so on. Now, these 10,000 companies I'm talking about, how many of them use technology? I would say very few. If only they can do just mass balance and energy balance, they can save a lot of money at the same time saving the environment, right? Now, how do they do mass balance, energy balance? They need graduates. Do the graduates know this? Unfortunately, no. So we need to train them on tools. So I took it upon our group to say that let's provide this training for chemical engineering graduates through our simulator. DWSim is an open source software created by a Brazilian friend. So that's how this, it's a cooperation. We are a connected world. Okay, it doesn't matter where they create, I contribute to it, and somebody else from, let's say, Ethiopia uses it, or South America uses it, so on and so forth. It becomes very exciting. So if you look at it that way, some chemical engineers would get jobs, because the problem is that supposing they end up as an IT person, they spent all the time studying chemical engineering, they become IT person, there is a possibility of them being always at the bottom of the ladder. Okay, because they are not computer scientists, and they are not supposed capable of or interested in learning more things. Whereas if they had gone to chemical engineering, they would have done better. I'm not saying that one should force all of them, but I'm saying, why is it the number of people going into the core sector is very less? Can we train them? Can we kind of create a job fair kind of a thing? Can we produce a platform wherein the small industry, small scale companies, and these students from, let's say, ordinary colleges come and meet each other, they find each other, and these people start working. So we are creating another avenue of employment for these children. Now, this can happen in any field. So, of course, in a broader way, I propose that why don't we provide IT training to all our children in the country? That's how the Spoken Tutorial project came. So I asked this question, is it possible to create a method suitable for self-learning? Can I guarantee that it is suitable for self-learning? And that we came up with a tool for that method of doing it based on our interaction with our student, government people and IIT. We have something called Web and Coding Club. And I was surprised to know that there were 1,000 members of the Web and Coding Club. And I was talking to the president of the Web and Coding Club, and I said, wow, very impressive, 1,000 students, 1,000 members of your club. And to that she said, wait, most of them are here to learn. People who can teach are very few. And they are really getting, tired of answering the same kind of question again and again and again. So then I said, can I put these people, the novices, into business? Can we give them some work? So we came up with a method called novice check of a script before it is converted to a video. That video is the Spoken Tutorial. So we paid them honorarium. So that means Just like every movie has a script, every one of our tutorials has a script. And then we ask a beginner to certify before it is the moment the script is created. Because the script is created by an expert. And the expert doesn't know the problems of a beginner. So let's ask the beginner. And most of the time, the beginners cannot understand. They miss out, let's say 2%. Then unless somebody comes and handholds, they lost it. Okay. So for self-learning, it is important they understand the entire 100%. Okay. That's when we came up with this novice check business. And we asked some of these beginners, why don't you come and go through it and certify? And of course, they would always come back and say, this is not okay. We would send it back. And unless they are convinced, we do not accept it. Okay. So that's how we made it suitable for self-learning. And I always say that if you create an ordinary tutorial, 10 people will watch it. If you make it 10 times better, 10,000 people will watch it. In fact, it happened, our C programming, C tutorials have been used by 1 million students, 10 lakh students. It was created by a 24-year-old person by name Ashwini Patil. She has just finished her MSc Computer Science from Mumbai University. Of course, she was very good. And she had joined. And so people used to complain about my being, very, stickler for rules, regulations, and so on. They used to complain, but afterwards they saw the impact. So they no longer complain. They accepted it. So we started this spoken tutorial for IT training. And at that time, I was, just before that, I was in charge of our distance education program at IIT Bombay called CD, Center for Distance Engineering Education Program, CD, Center for Distance Engineering Education Program, the mandate of which was to make available our material, that is whatever is created at IIT, to the outside world. So I became the head of it. And then of course I had cameraman, studios, and so on and so forth. And after doing that work for about 3-4 years, of course we did fantastic work. And we increased our output by almost an order of magnitude and so on. When I left that, when I returned to the department, I asked this question, do I really need all those resources, namely expensive studio, cameraman, cameras, editing, and so on and so forth? So then I came up with this, so can an ordinary person do something like this? So we came up with spoken tutorials because that requires only a laptop. And we could create spoken tutorials even using a 10,000 rupee laptop. So that is very simple. And so we proposed to MHRD. MHRD came up with this mission called National Mission on Education through ICT. And it was spearheaded by an amazing bureaucrat, Mr. N.K. Sinha. He was the mission director, and he was very passionate. And so we all he identified people who had similar kind of who had a passion for this. In fact, I would say for about almost 5 years, we used to meet on alternate Sundays in Delhi.
Wow.
Alternate Sundays, at least 3 years, maybe even for 5 years. And
so you'd fly
there. Every alternate Sunday, Saturday, we used to go there. I used to go.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because at that time we used to say that this mission is for everybody. Let people come. Let people make presentations. We would have met at least 1,000 faculty members from all across the country, various colleges. They came and made proposals. And we said that we will never reject a proposal. We will only point out the mistakes that they were making, and we would say, come back. And they would come back, and we would once again pay airfare to them, right? So it was an incredible experience. So all that I did when I was the head of this CD, but the same mission supported our spoken tutorial project. And then we said that it is for people who are helpless. This is for the people at the bottom of the pyramid. This is for people who are children of construction workers, rickshaw drivers, maid servants, and so on and so forth. Can they understand my material? So can I make my English simple? And then, so I already told you about this, making it suitable for self-learning. The second thing we did was about the language, because I was always concerned about it because I was affected by it. So when I had an opportunity,
Yes.
I wanted to do something about it. So I said, there are so many children who are extremely good, brilliant. Okay, it is just that they miss out because they are not fluent in English. Okay,
Yes.
I cannot make them fluent in English, but at least can we put this IT within their reach? Okay, so we said that the spoken part alone will be dubbed into all 22 languages. Why 22 languages? Because there are 22 languages in the Schedule 8 of our Constitution. I said all languages are
Wow.
equal. They're all our children. They're all our citizens. So even linguistic minorities, for example, those who claim Sanskrit to be their mother tongue, I don't think how many people speak. I think it's probably about 3-4 lakh people who claim their mother tongue to be Sanskrit. So we do have tutorials dubbed into Sanskrit. 300 tutorials we have already dubbed into Sanskrit. Okay. So we said that it's just a policy decision. We are a national project. We will make it available to all our children. The same high quality video that was created with 10 times the effort should be made available. But at the same time, it should not deprive them of their employment opportunities.
Yes.
For example, if somebody uses Devanagari keyboard, will TCS give them a job? Will Infosys give them a job? Or can they aspire to go to, let's say, Google or Microsoft? The answer is most of the time, no. So we have to be careful about it. And that is the reason why children want to go to English medium, because they want jobs. So here we said that, look, you will use a normal computer, normal keyboard. The employer will not even know that you are thinking in your mother tongue. Okay, because you'll produce the same code. And
Wow.
it is not rocket science. It's not rocket, programming is not rocket science. I always say that if you give sufficient number of small steps, anybody can climb Himalayas. Anybody can climb Himalayas. Same thing. So you give small pieces. The only thing you have to make sure is, supposing you say that I'm developing a program, I'm explaining it, and the students are listening to me through the video, and I cannot keep it very long. In 2007-8 itself, we decided our tutorials will be of 10-minute duration. This was discovered later by, I think edX published it, saying that somebody did a survey and found that ideal time was 6 to 9 minutes. They found a little later, in fact, 2013, if I'm not mistaken. But 2007-8 itself, we decided our tutorials will be of 10-minute duration, that it will not be too long. Then that's a small step that I was talking about to Himalayas. But in the 10-minute, you cannot complete a complicated topic like, let's say, C programming. Then you will save the code into something. So next, you will open next video, whatever the instructor created, the correct ending of the program will be given. Look, we created, so we don't ask whether he created it or not. I can always say that you must go through that. You must go through tutorials 1 through 9. We are in the 10th tutorial. So you would have created 100 lines of code. Let's start from that. But this person may have had some difficulty, may not have been able to create that program. So for every code, we give the starting point. For example, in one tutorial, we show, let's say in Python tutorial, we take a data set and say, I'm going to produce a nice looking graph. We give the same data set to that person. So we introduced a section called code files below spoken tutorials. For every tutorial, it's available. In other words, the starting point is identical. Okay, which means that every step can be reproduced. So long as the student does exactly the same thing, same results will happen. Starting point is the same, created for self-learning. Now, dubbing, once again, it's a serious problem because our languages tend to be verbose, okay? And whereas English can be very precise. And I didn't want to change the video, only the audio had to be, changed, okay? That made it very, very effective. In 5% effort, you need to change, you can change the audio. You don't have to do the novice check, nothing has to be done, okay? 10 times the effort is not required. Just replace every sentence by a corresponding sentence. So there we said that the reason why we cannot translate a given English sentence into, let's say, Tamil or Hindi or Malayalam or whatever, in the same time period is because the original English is very long, complicated structure. That sentence structure may not even be available in our language. So I said that we will enforce simple sentence structure. So how did we enforce? I said that most sentences shall have 60 characters or less. We enforce.
Wow.
And no sentence shall exceed 80 characters. That's a hard limit. If any sentence in the script exceeds 80 characters, we return the script. We don't accept it. Okay? Yeah. And it has happened, touch wood, most of the time it has worked. Somebody asked, where is the proof? It has worked. We have dubbed 1,000 tutorials into various languages. So we have about 10,000 dubbed tutorials. Okay. And then we also said that we will work only with FLOSS or open source software, free, liber, and open source software, so that we don't say that, well, my tutorial will be useful only if you buy this proprietary software. Okay. I said that is unfair. It is unfair to force people, and it is also not suitable for a national scale training. Here we are not talking about training my chemical engineering students in the second year, third year, not talking about IIT students, NIT students. I'm talking about the whole country, starting from, let's say primary school all the way to PhD students. Whole country, we're talking about training 350 million people. That's a huge number. How are we going to do this with proprietary software? Not possible. Of course, one can always be, C programming is C programming. GIS software is GIS. Animation, in fact, we are going to do a hackathon, animation 2D hackathon. In fact, Whistling Boots is joining, and so on and so forth. We are doing it jointly with AICTE. We are saying even school children can come. They have to create a 2-minute animation. So we are saying this through Synfig Studio, because it's an open source software, 2D animation software, right?
Yes.
And once they learn to do this, they can always go to a commercial software and use it. If they know, if they are very good in LibreOffice, they can do MS Office. If the industry company says, Scilab is extremely good, we have done fantastic work. Okay. In fact, in some cases, I will say what we have in Scilab is, MATLAB doesn't have. So why should you use MATLAB? Use Scilab. So, but company policy might be to say to use MATLAB, but they can switch over in one day. Not at all possible, not at all difficult, not at all impossible. So we made a policy decision that we will use only open source software. So our tutorials are available free of cost, thanks to the amazing policy decision by the Ministry of MHRD. Now it is called Ministry of Education. It said that all tutorials will be available under CC BY SA, Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. Okay, it's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing if you look at, because at that time, the fashionable thing to do was Creative Commons Attribution non-commercial, that you cannot use it for commercial purposes. But supposing a small company says that I want to cut a CD and distribute to people, it'll cost 100 rupees to me. Why? Because I need to recruit somebody. I need to employ somebody. I need to incur postal cost. Okay. So even if I'm just saying no profit, it's still going to cost me. But the moment I put non-commercial, this person somebody can take me to court saying that you're making profit, right? Whereas share alike says that, you can make money if you want. You can sell it if you want. But if you make modifications, that modified version also should come under the same licensing. Okay. So it's amazing
Yes.
policy decision by MHRD. Why I'm saying all this is we have some incredible people in the government, amazing people. I mean, we hear only about people who saying that things don't work and so on. But we should understand they have to they also have problems, because that is one thing I found out. Now that I'm talking about government, let me point out this also. I found out during my period, I'm just giving statistically speaking. So if you say that if there are, let's say, 10 amazing people, like let's say I mentioned Mr. Sinha, for example, amazing people who do fantastic things, in the government. And then you have, let's say, for argument's sake, I don't know the number, but argument's sake, even if we say double the number who are at the other end, bad people, and then stopping everything, not doing the work and so on, the remaining 70% of the people are neutral. And you convince them by your good work, and they will come. And I have seen that. It's an incredible thing. So you have the potential to take the whole, majority of the government with you. And because there is always a fear. What if they give it to some jokers, open source, they come and say all kinds of nice things, but they don't deliver? Then they get into audit problem. And the company will come and say, no, don't give it to this open source guys. They'll get you into trouble. Remember, they are neutral people. Okay.
Yes.
So I think it's a question of, so I think we were also able to do this. We were, of course, able to train, I think we have trained 67 lakh students using our method, using spoken tutorials. Whatever we have come up with is, worked very well. Yeah. So that's
very inspiring story, sir, about how you were able to go through so many of these, so many of these processes, build so many of them, and then actually impact, 60 to 70 lakh people, and then also have so many languages in it. So just to expand on that, in primary and secondary education, we still have very good translations of concepts of science concepts in different languages. Did you find an issue when you went to this higher advanced level of education in translating some of the concepts? Because many words, just because of the nature of research being in English or in other languages, are difficult to sort of translate. Were there any such hurdles that were there for the translation process?
Thanks for the question. I should admit, thanks for asking, because it's an important point. I should admit that we are not doing the translation of non-skills kind of topics. For example, who am I to say that one can understand theory of relativity by oneself without a teacher? So I'm not even venturing into that. It requires a lot more research work. What I'm saying is skills. Yes. I said I will stay only with IT skills. Okay. I mentioned about C programming, Java programming, LibreOffice, Scilab, or a software GeoGebra used by school children for algebra geometry, or JMOL for visualizing chemistry molecules. How does a benzene ring look? And all open source software. So in order to validate my point, validate my approach, I restricted myself only to skills topic. But it turns out that there are other kinds of skills as well. So I went into other things. For example, health and nutrition. Yes. Okay, health and nutrition, we have done some really fantastic work. I met a doctor. Can I say this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I met a doctor by name Rupal Dalal. Now she has come as an adjunct faculty member at IIT Bombay, and she is very passionate about exclusive breastfeeding for newborn. She says first 6 months baby should get only mother's milk, nothing else. Okay, because it does amazing things. First of all, it protects the babies from getting into diseases and stuff like that. And so that is something that nothing else. If you have powdered milk, then you don't have that protection at all, immunity at all. So that is one thing. The second thing is in order to feed baby powder milk for 6 months, it'll cost 5,000 rupees. If that mother had that 5,000 rupees, she could have eaten herself and fed the baby. Okay, that's the second thing. Third thing is, to make powder milk, you need clean drinking water, which we lack. And that's one of the reasons why we have diarrhea, dysentery, and children dying, and all kinds of problems. So one of the reasons. There could be other reasons, but she was very passionate. So she used to train about 1,000 health workers a year, health and mothers, nurses, and so on. I said, using our technology, we will scale it to 100,000. Okay, we have not done that. We have done about 30, 40,000 health workers, doctors, nurses, mothers, and so on. So if you say I trained one health worker using this method, then that health worker normally works with about 100 lactating mothers at a time. Wow. Okay, so you can imagine how this is scaling up. If we trained 30,000 people, then we have influenced, in some sense, 30 lakh people. So we have had amazing experience. Male guard children, babies, for example. Male guard is tiger reserve and tribal region, and people there haven't seen such healthy babies. Incredible experience. And so that work, once again, we did the same thing. We applied the same method, that it should be created for self-learning, should be dubbed into all languages, and it should be usable offline. Okay, method is the same, and 10 minutes. And we created about 40, 50 tutorials. So we are talking about first 6 months of a baby, and then complementary feeding, and then complementary feeding means food supplements, and then various things, vaccination, and so on and so forth. So we are looking at first 1,000 days of a baby, and it is incredible. And this some of it, first 6 months, for example, I talked about, doesn't cost any money. It is just information exchange. So which means wherever which means the government can implement without any expenditure. Nothing has to be bought. Of course, it is useful to have a doll to say that how you have to, breastfeed the doll, and and so on. But then it is reusable. So one time, it's not very expensive, right? But otherwise, you just have to, and these people can learn by themselves. And because we provide them in local languages, in fact, we found that it was required to be dubbed into some tribal languages also. So we found some volunteers to dub into some tribal languages, because they find it really difficult to understand Marathi, for example. Marathi, they find it difficult. Telugu, they find it difficult because they are in the border area and they don't understand either of them. So our people thought it is better to give it in their tribal language, and it has worked extremely well. So I would say skilling is a very important area, and the government has identified about 500 million people to be skilled. Okay, I'm not talking about theory of relativity at all. I'm not talking about fluid mechanics at all. Okay, this is useful in some other way also. For example, I'll give another example. There is a doctor by name Thomas Alexander. He's in Coimbatore, and he came up with a method to bring heart attack patients to the hospital. He is attached to Kovai Medical Center. It's a hospital in Coimbatore. People would, when the patients are transported, this paramedic would conduct some experiments, would take an ECG if required, draw blood and do a blood group study, and then give some tablet, all kinds of things. Okay, he had a 3G enabled in those days. Now I'm sure it is a 4G enabled ECG machine. So the person would be brought in. And one day I saw in a newspaper that the doctor said that one of the biggest problems they had was the paramedic turnover. They take people, they get on the job training, and the moment they get trained, they get a better job. They leave. Okay. So then what happens is it becomes very expensive and unviable. So once again, we gave a set of tutorials to them and said, flood the market with this. Okay, previously, for every job, 100 people will come, you select one person, best person, train that person leaves. Then once again, you have to start all over. In fact, this is a problem in our entire industry, not just this, everywhere. Whether it is a mechanic and so on and so forth, on-the-job training is required and the people leave. So now I said that instead of 100 people, you say you aim for 10 people. You say that here are the videos, learn by yourself, come for the interview, and I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you to demonstrate a few things. I'll give you the equipment. Okay, demonstrate. If you do that, I'm willing to consider. Now 100 people will not come, only 10 will come, and I'll take one, and they will start producing from day one, and I don't mind paying 25% more salary. And if that person goes, 9 other people are still there. Okay, and what it does is it motivates these people to learn and come. It motivates people with initiative. Okay, not people who just want to go learn. Here are somebody who say, look, I'm really interested, I want to learn, I will start contributing from day one. Imagine what this will do to our IT industry if IT industry were to implement this. Some companies can save 6 months of work because sometimes they spend even 6 months to train these people. Okay, yeah. So I will say only IT skills, only skills. So I don't, of course, even here there is a problem, but we say, to answer your other question, we do have such terms even in IT. Yeah. So we keep them in English. Mouse is a mouse. We don't say it is chooha.
Yeah.
Monitor is a monitor.
Yeah. Yes, since it's a new term, I guess the requirement for learning it is the same. Like the amount of load that you take learning a new term for mouse in Tamil, but otherwise calling it only mouse is also probably the same. Sir, so this, I mean, this is incredible that, while being in science, one is able to impact real world to such an extent. The 30 to 40 lakh mothers at any point of time, lactating mothers at any point of time being given good information, the 60 to 70 lakh people being upskilled in IT, and able to learn, not just the people who would have otherwise learned it, but a lot of people who would otherwise not have access to it because of the language and the cost barriers. So in your journey, what inspired you to take up this role, and who are the personalities that might have inspired you in your journey? You mentioned bureaucrats like Mr. Sinha, who have been very helpful, but other than that, are there some personalities that have inspired you in your journey and your career? And this level of positivity, this level of energy we can see in your journey, where do you draw the inspiration for this from?
Yeah. So before going into that, I forgot to mention one fact
Yes.
in the previous what I mentioned. In wherever we went, malnutrition levels have come down by about 5%, which is incredible number. And I believe that if we follow that method, we can just get rid of malnutrition in India. At least at the first 1 or 2 years, we can get rid of that, which is a starting point. Now coming to your this new question, I was greatly influenced by Swami Vivekananda. Okay, and so that is something that I read when I was in the US. Whenever I had doubts, I used to read Swami Vivekananda, and I drew so much energy from them. In fact, that is why when there is a Mahan, a saint or somebody, people look forward to that, because that person, through their teaching, speeches, talks, writings, and so on, can transform generations and lakhs of people simultaneously. Just one person. That's an incredible thing. Okay, that is why we all hold them in awe. People like Swami Vivekananda. Okay, and of course later on I found that Bhagavad Gita. Once again, it's an amazing thing that it just says, do your duty. I mean, very simple. Very simple. It says, do your duty. That's it. Okay, and after all, what is Bhagavad Gita? This is what Lord Krishna told Arjun, okay, saying that, do your duty, and he answered all his doubts in the battlefield. So I drew my this thing, and of course I am a disciple of Ramana Maharshi. That's in the philosophical level, religious level, but I would say that uh, these are some people who have influenced me, and I would say for everybody, they should read Swami Vivekananda. They should read Swami Vivekananda. All the youngsters, please read Swami Vivekananda.
Yes. So that sounds like some very good advice, and I personally have not read much about Swami Vivekananda, but I will go ahead and read about it. That you were inspired to be able to do such great work is, of course, an ode to the people who inspired you as well. The what messages would you have for young researchers, who are currently pursuing, say, a PhD like you were in the 1980s, or young researchers who are, currently in IITs or in other institutes like you were before then, in terms of um, what are the possibilities that they should explore at this point of time? Most people go into jobs, etc., but the kind of impact that you've been able to create, and as you pointed out um, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is important. The message is to do our duty. So what messages would you have for such young researchers in terms of what their duty is, and what the excitement they can find in pursuing such a career as well?
So before I do that, I forgot to say something for the previous question. Let me just add that quickly and then move on. I believe that one of the reasons why I got into all this, Swami Vivekananda and so on, is possibly due to education in my mother tongue. And I believe that it is something not available for people who study in English medium. I'm not able to argue one way or another, because I could read, Rajaji's translation, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and I've read it so many times. I didn't read any of the Western authors, for example, right? So something I used to believe. Okay, why does Swami Vivekananda people say, "Oh, this is useless things"? Somebody, but I was trained to believe all this. I was trained to, because of education in my mother tongue. So I believe that it is extremely, the new education policy is very good, that children, youngsters should learn in their mother tongue. And I think it is because that's where our culture comes through our languages, and our children should not lose that. Okay. Now, coming to the question that you asked, academia gives a lot of freedom. Okay, and wherever there is a problem to be solved, you get a paper if you want. If you are a researcher, of course, it is always possible for one person to say it's the same thing wherever you go. For example, in the US, if somebody says, "I want to be tenured," okay, then at the time you work very hard, and after that you take a little more liberty and explore. One of the problems, however, is there is a possibility of some people saying that I have become permanent, now I don't have to work. That fear is always there. In India, jobs are protected. 1 year later you become permanent. Okay, so you can say I will not work. So that fear is there. You also tend to get influenced by people who have lost their passion, because youngsters are idealistic. Youngsters want to do things. What is important is that we need to have a system. We need to create a system that will allow these youngsters to retain their idealism. Okay, that is extremely important for a society. Okay, so it is important for elders to become role models. Not only they, I mean, if I can influence some 10 youngsters, then I have done something very good for the society. So it is extremely important. Otherwise, these people will get, disappointed and disgusted, and so on and so forth, saying that, oh, that's how the life is in India. It is not. I mean, it can be, I don't think I would have had such an enriching life anywhere else in the world. Okay. So I would say you can do this anywhere, but I would say come to India, because India is the place where the action is. For everyone, for example, when I say go out and say that I want to do this, and there are so many people who want to learn. Just to, in fact, let me give you one more example. When I returned to India, I went and worked with. I used to be a consultant at TRDDC, it's a research wing of TCS. Every week I used to go, for example, and at that time, computers had just come, and there were a lot of people. There would be a lot of papers from Carnegie Mellon, MIT, and places like that. And one of my friends there, Keshav Noori, amazing guy, he used to say that, look, for places like Carnegie Mellon or MIT, because they have 1,000 computers, every one of them is a research problem. Whereas you have only one computer, so you cannot do much with it. You don't have the problem of a clash between 2-3 people's messages and how to resolve that, and computer overload, stuff like that. It is not there. You have only one computer, only one person can use at that time, and you don't have to worry about how do I provide UPS and so on and so forth. Now, interestingly, that has happened in education technology. My friend who used to present papers overseas would say, what is this? These people are presenting papers based on 30 people doing, doing something. Here, when I teach, 1,000 people are willing to listen to me. So if you look at the scale, if you look at the data available, of course, you have to come up with a controlled study. Okay, but it is possible. And of course, unlike the Western world, where MOOCs is mainly icing on cake, here it is bread and butter, because students don't have courses. So you created, you cannot say that if 10% of the people complete it, it is good enough. No, not possible. Government is ready to support it, but they would want 70%, 80% completion rate, because taxpayers' money, government money. So there are some extra requirements, but on the other hand, you also have a great place to do education technology kind of research. And this kind of thing is available for every one of them, even in hardware. For example, you say, I want to build a low cost microscope. Okay, now how do I build it? I mean, it's a, a physicist can do it, an electronics person can do that. Can we give it to all the children? Can we make them go through, study their leaves and, insects and, so on and so forth? I mean, so in every one of them, huge numbers, and we have the potential to solve at least some problems. And you take one problem, you solve it for 1 million people, then it becomes a huge problem, very challenging, and so on. So I gave this example, but every one of them, even if you say that I want to get good BSc students into my MSc. Okay. In fact, one of the topics I'm working on, thinking of for quite some time, is what I call as constructing attainable pyramids of excellence. Attainable pyramids of excellence. Pyramid of excellence. Pyramid, you understand, you start from the bottom, you take everybody, keep taking people to higher and higher levels. As they go up, they become so good, they can be placed anywhere in the world, and everything should happen transparently. That means everybody should say, if I work, I can go to the next level, right? It is not based on the numbers, saying that, no, I will admit only, 100 people. I will admit only 5,000 people into IITs, even if 5 lakh people apply for it. I'm not talking about that, because there could be 50,000 people who are fit enough, but we have room for only 5,000 people. Here I'm saying the pyramid I'm talking about is anybody who demonstrates by solving a problem, not by scoring marks in an exam, not based on exam. Exams are required, but I'm saying that we should also come up with more and more of problem solving, people who have done the work, go to the next level, go to the next level, and so on. We have experimented with that in some topics and it works incredibly well. And people at the top can be placed anywhere in the world. On seeing that, people one level lower will say, no, if only I had put in 10% more effort, I could have gone there. Okay, at every level, people will say that. And so the whole pyramid will get lifted. Right?
That's
so
incredible.
I believe that is a way. So if you say that I want to do it for optics, for example, so you can do that. What is the best way? You identify an open source software in optics. For example, closest. And say, let's do something. If somebody asks me, I will be able to give some ideas. In fact, this is something somebody in Sweden asked me. You seem to have done a lot of work. I want to identify people across the world, and because I work in a niche area. So I suggested this to him. He said, yeah, this seems to be like a good idea. So immediately you get the ball rolling, ask people to work on it. You create spoken tutorials, make it available to them. They can learn by themselves. You say, this is a problem to be solved, and I'm going to host all of it in one place, and I'm going to give you recognition. I'm going to give you certificate. If government funding is there, you give financial support, small auditorium, but even that is not required. What is more important is the URL. We have heard some of the students who contributed to our projects saying that, in fact, there was a student who said that I think he was an NIT Trichy student. He said that he got a Japanese internship because he gave a link to one of his contributions on our webpage.
Wow.
A student applied for assistantship, TA-ship in Rutgers University, and they asked him, how do I know that you can write programs? So he gave a link to the contribution that he made to our website. Okay, so I have not talked about that. There is something called FOSSEE that will be a separate discussion altogether. But yes. So these people get recognized. That's what I'm saying. Being at the top, then next people will say, oh, I could have done that. Right? Yes. Whole pyramid gets lifted. So I believe that for our country, we need thousands of such pyramids of excellence. And every one of you can construct one such pyramid, or a few of you get together, construct a pyramid. And it's an amazing, incredible thing. Yes. That's how we should go forward.
Oh,
not
wonderful, sir. Yeah. So finally, would you have any message for those youngsters who have not yet been exposed to science? You know, something very simple about how they can get into the field. You know, there will be a lot of people we hope will be watching you who haven't yet gotten the exposure to getting into an IIT, or haven't yet gotten the exposure to, you know, internet as much. And in such a situation, you know, what is the hope that they can reach a stage? You know, they see a Professor Kannan Mudgalya here today, and what is the hope that they can reach a stage where you've reached? You know, coming from, of course, a humble background and coming from a place where they may need to work to actually feed their family. What ray of hope do you see for that?
So I believe that there is a huge, huge potential for everybody. Everybody. I'll give an example. Sometimes people say that if we produce so many IT graduates, where will they get jobs? Okay, so many engineers, where will they get jobs? Look at the number of bridges to be constructed. Okay, IT companies don't go for high value added projects because they need highly skilled people, and we don't have enough. Okay, so I believe that if we have good people never have difficulty in getting jobs. Okay, there can be 1,000 Kannan Mudgalyas. Okay, it's a huge country. In fact, if you read Dr. Abdul Kalam's a book, third book, or is it second book? Maybe second book. Where he talks about we need so many people. We need 20 lakh people to do this. We have 30 lakh. We need 30 lakh people to do this, and so on and so forth. So much work to be done. So many roads have to be constructed. I mean, so many houses have to be constructed. Okay. Now, for example, I stood in, queues to buy train ticket, like everybody else, like your parents, for example, in old days. Now I don't have to do this. But have the jobs come down because they created this IRCTC portal and they created the software? Jobs only gone up, and our comfort level has gone up. Okay. Now I can just sit and buy it. In fact, if I can just see when tickets are available and I will go and buy. I don't have to go there, wait, talk to the counter clerk and so on. So I would say in every field, there is so much work to be done. And I would say for people who are good, sky is the limit. Sky is the limit. Okay. About science. So what I would say is, I would say that what is more important is whatever field they choose, it could be arts, it could be history, it could be economics, it could be science, whatever it is, they should strive for excellence. They should strive for excellence, right? They should not be satisfied with saying that I know how to get through this MCQ based exam. That's not enough. You have to ask your question, do you understand the subject? Do you understand why you are ticking that? If somebody says, ask the same question without the options, can you write the answer and get it right? Okay. So if you can do that, then you are doing it properly. Whatever, because of course there are a lot of YouTube videos and so on and so forth available. One can really find out what do the physicists do, what do chemists do, what do biologists do, genes and with this pandemic and so on and so forth, and also artificial intelligence, machine learning, all kinds of things, amazing things are there, and lots of information is available. So one can actually find out. Children should spend time to find out what is it they like to do. Okay, and so I would say, instead of saying science, of course, what I'm going to say will be suitable for people who think that they like science. Okay, and they can do whatever I mentioned just now. But same thing can be done by people in accounting. People can be done in people in history, for example. We have one of the projects called National Virtual Library of India, and our product is a portal called indianculture.gov.in. It's a government indianculture.gov.in. It's an amazing portal wherein we bring all the arts and culture of India to the whole world. There is so much work to do. India was always known for its art, culture, and so on. What happened to it? When are we going to go back? When are we going to reach even 10% of that? So I'm saying not only scientists, of course, now we are talking about walkthrough. Can somebody sitting far away get a 3D walkthrough in their ancestral temple in their village, for example? You need arts, you need culture, you need IT, you need visualization, you need design kind of people, architecture, all kinds of things. I mean, there is so much to do. So I don't want people to be disillusioned. Lots to do. Read Swami Vivekananda.
Yes. So I think so we will end here. Thank you so much for your time. I think the message is loud and clear to the youngsters listening today. Please pursue your subject, pursue the understanding of subjects, not just using them as a tool potentially to solve an MCQ or so on and so forth. Read as much as you can, what you can, and when you can. And I think we have a very fine example. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Professor Kanan Mudgalia. I feel very inspired at this point of time to be able to, that there is so much to be done in India. And for those who are here listening to us from abroad, there are opportunities, and this um, is the finest example of a man who has used one of the finest examples of a man who has used the opportunities to make such big change, and use the entire education, not just one subject, but entire education to make this change. With that, I will thank Professor Sir. It has been an absolute pleasure. I'll stop the recording at this point of time. Thank you.